Welcome to June Wine Club for Divine Vintage in 2026. So this month, as the weather warms up, we're going back to France and we're looking at one property, one estate that comes from the southern part of Burgundy. So this is an area known as Beaujolais. The reason we wanted to look at Beaujolais and highlight Beaujolais is because it doesn't have a particularly strong reputation, and a lot of this is due to the 1970s and the 1980s when there was a craze for something called Beaujolais Nouveau. So the idea of Beaujolais Nouveau, it was the first release of wine that was made that year. So there's a general rule that the week before Thanksgiving, it's always the third Thursday in November, they would release the new wine of the vintage. So, for example, we're in 2026 now. So the third week of September this year, we'll be drinking wines that are made in 2026. So it was a fun idea where it helped with cash flow for quite a poor region at the time. And it also gave people the opportunity to have the first taste of the current year's wine. So these were wines that were easy to drink. They were not particularly complicated or complex, and they were best designed to be drunk within a few months. Being in the US, it works very well at Thanksgiving. So Beaujolais is a very versatile wine, but not all Beaujolais is created equal. The Nouveau was always just the first cab off the rank, if you like. But after that, then you go into the main region of Beaujolais. Within that, you get a little level up where you get something called Beaujolais Village, which we'll be looking at this month. And then finally, we get to something called the Beaujolais Crus. So the Crus are the places. There's 10 named villages, and we'll be looking at probably one of the most famous ones, known as the Queen of Beaujolais, which is Fleury. So for this month, we've come across a fabulously old winery and estate. It's called Chateau de Poncier. And we have a white wine made from Chardonnay and a red wine made from Gamay, in that order. And generally, when you think about Beaujolais, you think about red wines. Although, in this case, the Chardonnay's been grown by Chateau de Poncier since 1904. So over 120 years they've been growing Chardonnay. This is the first release of one made in a very special way. The second one is really what the estate's best known for, which is the wine called Fleury. So Fleury is a village. It's a village in Beaujolais, in the north of the Beaujolais region. So this is an area that's just north of Lyon, the great gastronomic heart of France. So the Fleury region and the wines of Fleury, as the name suggests, have quite a floral character, quite flowery. But what I really love about this estate is incredibly, and the Fleury, their flagship wine, is named 949. That's the year this winery was established. So that's quite incredible. What's that? 1,077 years old this year. So that really is quite remarkable. What happened? There was a man called Tioza back in the day. So in 949, he gifted the property to the monks. So the monks of Burgundy, or the of Cluny, were very important parts of the history of Burgundy and the whole region. And if you gifted a property like this, then you're in the good graces of the church, and then good luck would be bestowed upon you. So we're fortunate that this winery has been going since 949, before Gamay was even discovered, but they were growing vines there. And it's been in several hands over its history, and most recently in 2020, it became into some new hands. So in 2020, they also converted the whole estate to organic farming, and now they do biodynamic practices as well. And so this is a story of returning, if you like, to ancient ways of making wines, which was organics. There was no chemicals around anyway. But with all that history comes a lot of responsibility too. There's been decisions made throughout that 1,000 years that weren't necessarily made by the current winemakers, but it's the angle that the vines are planted, the sort of drainage that they have, all these things, how they looked after the soil for all these years. And there's a real responsibility on the current owners to uphold that tradition and try to translate that into producing wines that really reflect the place. Now, starting with the Chardonnay. Now, Chardonnay is really well known and famous in Burgundy proper. Most of it comes from what's known as the Côte de Beaune. So this is south of the town of Beaune. And if you think back to March, if you're in the wine club, we featured a Bourgogne Côte d'Or from a producer called Domaine Michelot. And Michelot is based in Meursault, and Meursault is one of the most famous white wine villages in the world, producing Chardonnay. Quite long-lived, quite rich, quite unctuous. But the difference between this one and Meursault is there's no oak involved in this. And the really fun thing with this wine, it's actually what's known as a Beaujolais Village Blanc. So it's up from the general level of Beaujolais, but you'll see it on the label also. It says vinifé en œuf. So an œuf is French for an egg. Sounds strange, but the word éclosion means to hatch. So as in to hatch from an egg. It also means for a flower, when a flower opens up. But what's unique with this, and this is the first time they've done it in 2023, is they have vinified, they have fermented the wine inside a concrete egg-shaped vessel. Now that does a couple of things. If you ferment white wine, Chardonnay, in oak, then you'll get some woody notes, you'll get some oaky character. This doesn't have that. If you ferment it in stainless steel, it's what's known as inert. So there's no real character you get from it at all. It just keeps the purity of the wine. So the best example of that is Chablis, which we've done before in the wine club, which is unoaked Chardonnay from northwest Burgundy. Very, very cool climate. The benefits of fermenting in a concrete egg is there's this convection, there's this natural way that when the wine's fermenting, the lees, or the dead yeast, rolls throughout the wine. It has contact with the concrete on the inside, and while this isn't giving flavor as such, it is giving texture. The lees and the concrete interact, so you end up with a wine which is unoaked, but it does have some texture and some character that you'd get with oak without the oaky notes. So pouring this out, this is it's bright, it's clear, it's fresh, and because it's a cooler climate than you'd get in California, then the wine's very much fresher. So when you smell this, there's peachy notes, there's some sort of orchard fruit. And you get this creamy texture too, and that creamy texture is coming from the lees, which is the dead yeast that's been rolling around in this egg as the wine's been fermenting. So as their first try, that's lovely. It's halfway between a Chablis and a regular Burgundy. So it doesn't have the oaky notes of regular Burgundy, but it does have a texture of the lees, which you also get with Chablis. But because it's southern Burgundy, so it's just above Lyon, the city of Lyon, and below Lyon is the northern Rhone. So back in March, we did a white Rhone called Crus from Chapoutier in the northern Rhone, and it was a lot richer. This is a Chardonnay grown on the cool northern slopes in the northern part of Beaujolais, and it just comes across as very fresh. There's lovely acidity, there's lovely freshness to it, but it's not as crisp as the Chablis. It's got a lovely rich texture to it, but it's not as full-bodied as you'd get with a lot of Burgundy. Some people have called this like a baby Meursault, and I can see that, but it's at a fraction of the price of what a Meursault would be. So in terms of food matching, this would be fabulous with seafood. Oysters would be good. It goes very well with roast chicken, and also a number of cheeses. So this is a great wine to have as you're starting off your evening. Maybe you're having some appetizers, you're having some fresh seafood. It's really good for June, because June things are warming up. You're going to be outside a lot more. And we thought we'd introduce you to another side of Beaujolais that people aren't really familiar with. So Chardonnay from Beaujolais is quite new to a lot of people. And I think this is a great example of what's possible there. So moving on from that, we get to really the main event, if you like. And this is also from the 2023 vintage, from one of the 10 villages, or the crus. Fleury is probably as well known as wines like either Moulin à Vent, which means the windmill, and there's an actual windmill up on the hills. So last time I was in Fleury, I looked across to the hill and you see a windmill on the top of a hill, and that's the vineyards of Moulin à Vent. So think Moulin Rouge, and you've got the whole windmill thing happening. And then the next, probably most famous one, would be Morgon. So in the store, we have a lot of wines that are from the Morgon cru of Beaujolais, and these are a lot more substantial. They're a lot sort of more sturdy and long-lived, whereas Fleury, the queen of Beaujolais, just has that lovely light red translucent color. And this is very typical of the wines made from Gamay. So that's a beautiful fresh. You see, it's not that dark ruby red that you get with a lot of red wines. It's very much sort of a light to medium bothered fresh red. And when you smell it, it's just pure essence of red fruits. There is a floral note to it. So people talk about fleury being the flower. And there's no oak with this either. So this is aged also in concrete tanks. So that allows the purity of the fruit to show through without any oak masking it. And when you taste it, it's just so delightful. It's silky. There's a translucence about it. It's not full-bodied at all. It's got this kind of crunchy red fruit. So it's got some real character to it. And the food matching possibilities, I always believe that red Beaujolais is probably one of the most food-friendly red wines out there. This is something I'd even have with sushi. That sounds a little controversial, but particularly with tuna, to go with some of the salmon dishes, even say some mackerel. Spanish mackerel would be fabulous with this as well. But think Thanksgiving as well, it'll be all turkey and all the trimmings. And it's got this ability, Beaujolais, to be a real chameleon where it can kind of match whatever you're eating. Beaujolais really hits the trick. So in terms of temperature, these are a little bit cooler. So if a lot of red wines were kind of serving at sort of 57 to 65 degrees, I'd do this one in the 50s. So maybe even like low 50s into the mid 50s. So you could have a slight chill on it. I wouldn't serve it cold, but what you could do is just pop it in the fridge 15 or 20 minutes before you drink it, and it just gives a little coolness to it, and it helps to pick up that lovely red fruit. That's the floral. There's a little bit of spice there as well. And 2023 is a really, really nice vintage for Beaujolais. It's really nice in red Burgundy as well with Pinot Noir. But this is delightful. This is a really nice thing. So they've been at it since 949. Got a pretty good idea they know what they're doing. Jen and I should be visiting them later this month, so we'll be able to send some more information and some videos, and we're going to find out more about this special place. I lived in Beaujolais years ago, so back in 2000, I lived with a Beaujolais producer for the whole summer, and I just loved the region. It was really fabulous. It was really sort of rural. You had all these great Beaujolais to drink, and it's not far from Lyon, so we'll be popping into Lyon as well to have a good meal. So this is the wine club for this month, Chateau de Poncier. From 949, we have the white Chardonnay fermented in concrete eggs. And then we have the cru wine of Fleury, one of the great villages of Beaujolais, which is drinking beautifully now, but you could also hold this for up to 5 years. Pretty hard to resist now, though. So welcome to June Wine Club for 2026. Enjoy these wines, and we'll see you next month. Cheers.